Welcome, warriors. I am blessed to have Shawn here with me today. She is a survivor of a rare cancer who is amazingly generous with her lessons learned. Grab a tissue and learn how she is using what cancer tried to steal from her in order to make an impact in the lives of others. Let's roll.
Does your past haunt you? Maybe you're in a storm that feels like it will never end. Are you fighting a battle that's rendering you hopeless? Maybe you feel like you're fighting alone, but your battle was not meant to be a solo endeavor. You were meant to be a warrior among warriors. My name is Heather, and I grew up thinking my battles were nobody's business until I found myself in an abusive marriage and felt cut off from all avenues of help. In this podcast, you will hear warriors' words. They will tell you of their battles, both won and lost, their journeys, and their lessons learned along the way. But we don't stop there. These warriors will share how they have applied those lessons to go from warrior to survivor to thriver. Whether it's an abusive marriage, illness, mental health crisis, or any number of traumas this world dishes out, these warriors will use their words to help you find the beauty in your broken, move beyond your battles, and become the thriver God created you to be. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words.
Welcome back to the Warrior Words podcast. Shawn Elizabeth George is a Christian author, wellness coach, and the host of the Pause, Breathe, Pray podcast. With a heart for encouraging others, Shawn empowers people to live from the inside out, with God's word as their core and foundation. Doing this in her own life transformed her heart, mind, and life, and she wholeheartedly believes it will do the same for you. As a rare cancer survivor, Shawn faced the challenging experience of having her palate removed, and now she uses an artificial removable device called an obturator to speak and eat. Through through this and other life experiences, Shawn has learned to draw closer to God, who will help us transform adversity into opportunity. And she inspires others to do the same through her books, podcast, and speaking engagements. Shawn lives in her hometown in Connecticut with her patient husband, her 3 courageous kids, and their quirky black lab, Georgia. But before Shawn shares her story with us, here is a review from Kelsey Wick. Wow, just wow. So much hope packed into this podcast. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you for recognizing the hope this podcast provides. Now, would you like me to read your review on an upcoming episode? Please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the show. Your comments and star ratings help people find the Warrior Words podcast, and it only takes a few minutes of your time. And please share the show with other people that you think might enjoy hearing these stories. And now I would like to invite you to come join us in the Warrior Words Facebook community for inspirational stories, lessons learned, and beauty bombs. Just go to facebook.com/groups/Warrior Words and request to join. Please answer the few questions that pop up after requesting, and then I look forward to getting to know you in there. Now, on to the show. Hi, everyone. As you heard in the intro, we are blessed to have Shawn Elizabeth George with us today. Welcome to the Warrior Words podcast, Shawn.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today, Heather.
Well, I am so glad that we were able to arrange this time to be together and to share your story. And for everyone listening, Shawn and I met, as I have said with so many of my guests here, we've met in a mutual Facebook group, and she and I have cancer in common. And but her story's a bit different than mine, as she has a more rare, or she had a more rare form of cancer. So, Shawn, would you share your cancer journey with our listeners today?
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to listen. And then, Heather, thanks for what you're doing to shine a light in dark spaces. And I really appreciate what you're doing. So in 2017, after about 8 or 9 months of going to doctors for sinus issues, I had changed doctors. And in that first appointment with a new doctor, they said to go to see a ear, nose, and throat doctor. And so in January 2017, I had an appointment with the ear, nose, and throat doctor. And I went into that appointment expecting to get nasal spray or something to help with the congestion. And to be honest, I had been snoring and it had been driving my husband nuts. So I actually almost didn't go to that appointment, but I figured maybe I should. So I went. And in that appointment, the ENT man, Dr. Tessima, who I just adore, he did a scope and afterwards said, "Let me show you what I see." And he showed me the video of the scope in my nose, and he said, "See that? I'm supposed to see the back of your nose, but I can't. You see, there's a lump there." And then he showed me the video of the back of my mouth, my palate, back of my mouth, and there was something protruding back there as well. And so he said, go next door and we're going to get you a scan today. Call your husband and come back today with your husband and we're going to review the scan. And I was completely dumbfounded and called my husband, who graciously came over and met me where the scan was. And I got the scan. And together, Stephen and I went to see Dr. Tetsema. And he reviewed the scan and showed that there was actually a tumor in my nasal cavity that had grown into my palate and had eroded bone. And of course, I'm just in shock looking at this, being like, is this cancer? And he's like, well, we need more information. We need more information. So over the next week, I had different scans and also had a biopsy, and it was concluded that I had something called adenoid cystic carcinoma, which is a rare salivary gland cancer. And you're more likely to get struck by lightning or win the lottery than get this cancer.
Oh, wow.
So at the time, our kids, Kate was 10, Gavin was 9, and Matthew was 4. And it was just a very unsettling time, as I know you know, and anyone listening knows who has heard the words, you have cancer. Yeah. And adenoid cystic carcinoma is, like I said, a rare cancer. And the day I looked it up online, I looked it up and I read the stats and I closed my computer and I was like, I should not be looking at this.
Right.
The information was not really encouraging. And actually 2 years before I was diagnosed, my mom had been diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. And I learned in her cancer journey how reading things online was not necessarily beneficial because my mom's story was being lived out. It wasn't necessarily a statistic. And I had to remind myself that my story was being lived out and I wasn't a statistic.
Right.
And that God, my story is in God's hands, not on the. Sometimes hard to remember that.
Yes.
So my husband and I we lived just outside of Hartford. So we went to a hospital in Hartford and a hospital in New York and a hospital in Boston to meet with different doctors to determine what my care plan was going to be. And so we decided to go to Boston because it was kind of the most invasive, but it felt the most thorough.
Okay.
So in March of 2017, I had what's called a partial maxillectomy, which means I had to have part of the roof of my mouth removed, as well as some of my gums and my back 3 teeth on the right side. And so I actually have a big hole in my mouth now. So I speak with you today with something called an obturator, which is an artificial removable device that helps me speak and helps me eat. And so after that surgery, I had to heal and was trying to prepare in the calm for the next storm, which was treatment, which I know you understand. And so from 7 weeks from May 2017 to June 2017, I had to go to Boston Monday through Friday for proton beam radiation. Proton beam radiation, for those who are listening, is a more targeted radiation. So due to the location of my tumor, having regular radiation may have left me with greater collateral damage, I will say.
Mhm.
And having proton beam radiation, there was less collateral damage where the tumor was. They were worried about where the brain being a part of um, the space. So I went there, and I also had 7 rounds of low dose chemo. And so my treatment ended in the end of June 2023, excuse me, June 2017. And since then, I'm considered NED, which is no evidence of disease. And I pray every day that anything that was possibly, because I did not have clear margins. I did not say that when they had the surgery. So I pray that the radiation got it, and that just, I'm cancer free from the crown of my head to the soles of my feet. So it's been a journey, and ACC is different than other cancers. And typically when you get to 5 years, they say you're cancer free or you're in remission.
Mhm.
With ACC, we look for life. So, and it's known to metastasize to lungs and liver. So I am scanned. I started with every 3 months, then 6 months, and then 9 months. I'm actually at my first time being scanned after a year, but I'm scanned from my head to my abdomen. Um,
Mhm.
just again, NED, very thankful, and just as I said, continue to pray to be every day and every year.
And those words, no evidence of disease, are the 3 words that counteract the fear of the 3 words you have cancer.
So true.
And yeah, I heard no evidence of disease on December 23rd.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yes, I had my PET scan was December 19th, and I left there saying, well, this is going to be the best Christmas or the worst Christmas.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was a great phrase to hear. And so I'm so grateful that you have heard that then now for six years. No, wait, no. Let's see if I can do math. 7.
Yeah, but what a great
7.
Christmas gift for you to get that.
Yes, yes. Oh no, absolutely. I remember that every year. In fact, I don't know about your oncologist, but mine told me celebrate everything.
Mhm.
So I have a birthday now on January 17th, which was the day of my mastectomy, and then and January 15th, which is my actual birthday. So I had my mastectomy 2 days after my birthday. But then my last day of radiation, my last day of chemo, and then the no evidence of disease date. So lots of birthdays, and just to remember how beautiful life is.
It
Um,
really is. I call them cancerversaries.
yeah, oh, I like that one too. Yes.
Celebrate my cancerversary and try to make good on that day. And again, with gratitude in my heart, just seeking ways to live out love on those days specifically
Yeah,
to remember I get to be here. And not everyone does. And I want to
right.
honor people too, but with the gift of life, I want to use it wisely.
Oh, amen to that. Yes. And so, yeah, so I'd like to talk about that a little bit. So you have been no evidence of disease for 7 years, is 7, yes. What kinds of things have you been doing in those 7 years to celebrate that gift of life and to show that gratitude?
Yeah, well, right, actually, November of 2016, prior to being diagnosed with cancer, I had written a kid's book called A Place for Sam. And that book is about a little puzzle piece named Sam who doesn't like the way she's made, but she comes to learn with the help of the puzzle maker that she has a place and purpose in the puzzle, which is the world, and that her puzzle piece matters in the world. And so I didn't really do anything with that book. And it was such a gift that I had written that because at the end of my treatment, I made little cards and I wrapped up those books and I gave them to like everybody on my care team. And I mean, every day I'd walk by, this gentleman, Patrick, who was a valet at the hospital. I would walk from the hotel to the hospital, but I was like, Patrick, your puzzle piece matters. And I'm handing out this book to people, to my doctor, to my nurses, so that was a gift in a way for me to kind of give back something to others. So that was one way I chose to live out love. And then really rather than working, I mean, I was sharing that book with kids, but I also took that year, I called it my year of healing.
Mhm.
And being a writer, I decided to take that year and create another book, which was called Our Struggles Have Purpose. And it's life lessons that I learned through my journey with cancer. So it's from day of diagnosis through the end of treatment, and just little life lessons I learned along the way and scripture to go with them, to just share how what I learned and how even in the hard circumstances, like God is with you. And he just revealed to me some things, and I just wanted to put it down so that if others who are going through their cancer journey, or even people who are walking beside someone going through cancer, can kind of see the journey. And at the end of each, they're just like 1 or 2 pages, each life lesson. And at the end, I have like a pause, breathe, pray, reflection and application section, because it's my story, but still the principle I talk about is applicable to any reader. So I just wanted to flip it around so someone could take that and then how can they apply it in their life. So I did that, and yes, and so I just, yeah, I've been out with the books and encouraging people that way. I have a different book I wrote as well called Align with Your Divine Design, which is studying Proverbs to build scripture-based prayers over your heart, mind, and body. And yeah, and then I started a podcast as well, which I wasn't intending to. And I started it
Isn't that the
initially.
way?
I know God is good, but sometimes on these, like, I'm not a writer. My background is a health and phys ed teacher, so the fact that I write is like, what? But I realized at my core, I'm an encourager. So I used to do it
Mhm.
from the outside in with health and phys ed about our bodies, but now I like to encourage people from the inside out, to help be well in their heart, in their hearts and their minds, because my cancer journey taught me that it was kind of outrageous. The most peace I've ever had in my life was when I had cancer. And so that wellness was really something I found within, and that relationship with God, and wasn't something I found on the outside. So yeah, so Live from the Inside Out was initially how I started the podcast. And I've turned it to Pause, Breathe, Pray, but it was season 1 was Live from the Inside Out. Season 2 is actually kind of taking that Our Struggles Have Purpose book with some other life lessons woven in. And just, I realized some people aren't ready to sit and read, but if you're driving to an appointment, if you're sitting in waiting for your scans or something, these little like 10, 12 minute podcasts can just be something in their ear, so that Our Struggles Have Purpose book is the season 2 of the podcast. So really just trying to harness my story and use it for good. And so I also, pre-COVID, and I'm so sad because COVID kind of shut it down the 3rd year, but I did a community dodgeball tournament where we raised $20,000 for rare cancer research.
Wow.
ACCRF is Adenoid Cystic Carcinoma Research Foundation. So that is the one research foundation in the United States that researches only ACC. So yeah, so just trying to see how I can give back to others.
That is awesome. And it's beautiful using, well, first of all, that you recognized that there were lessons in the cancer
Mm.
and in the journey and the treatment and all of that. And I think that's one of the things that I like about, or one of the things that I'm trying to do with this podcast is to share with people that we can learn lessons and we can find beauty even amidst all the trauma that life that life dishes out. And it's not always the same. Like you said, they may not have cancer, or they may not have your cancer, and they can still relate to the lessons that you are learning and that you are sharing through your book and through your podcast episodes. And yeah, I love finding beauty in all of those hard things and traumatic experiences.
I
So
realize that often, like, we can look at our struggles in 2 different ways. Maybe there's 3 or 4, I don't know. But the 2 ways I see it, one of them is they can be stumbling blocks and they trip us up and they keep us down, or
Mhm.
we can use that as a stepping stone to help us rise up closer to God and closer to who He made us to be, which is to love Him and love others. And so
Right.
not every day is easy. I love this saying. I believe it goes that there's not every day is good, but there's good in every day. And just seeking
Yeah.
out what is good, even in the midst of the turmoil and in the struggle. And it's not every day that I definitely had hard days. That first week when I was in Boston, I was low. I definitely, I've struggled with anxiety and depression in the past. And that's actually, but that was part of my journey to faith, was hitting a big pit of depression back in 2009. But when I was really low in Boston, it was like I'm away from my family. I was very focused on me. And that weekend, came home and I got to be with my family, and it was so wonderful. And there's a wonderful kids book. Do you know Miss Rumphius? I don't know if you
No.
book. It's this beautiful book, Miss Rumphius. And I used to read it to my kids. And it's this woman, and she has like three goals in life. And it's like to live by the sea, I forget them, but one of them is like to make a difference.
Mhm.
And what she ended up doing was she would go out and she would just like throw lupine seeds around her community. And she became known as Lupine Lady because in the spring, oh, like her community was always filled with lupines. And God just reminded me that, like, even though I was in Boston, I wasn't just there to heal. There was love He's put in me to also sprinkle there. And so that second week, I went back to Boston, really trying to be more outward facing and saying, okay, I'm here to heal, but also how can I love on others and be a part of others' healing by loving on them? And so that was really something that I think is transformative, not just for the year of cancer, but any day in our life is, are we so focused on, what we're getting, or can we also, we might still need things, but can we also parallel with that, seek on how we can live out love?
I love that about the seeds and the lupines because anything can be a seed.
Right.
And you returning to Boston, because that was something that I was going to ask because you are from Connecticut, and I know that that's not. I've lived in Connecticut, and I know that even though Massachusetts is a neighbor, you're not talking about a 10-15 minute drive. So it's not just a commute in your car like you would to work. Um, so I was going to ask if you were staying in a hotel or if there was a place for you to stay. So you answered that one for me, and I love the transformation from week one to week two. That you're more fearful and you're more worried about the treatment and the cancer and more self-focused, and then you come back and you say, okay, no, I'm going to live out love. And I just I that's just beautiful. So you planted your own lupines in Massachusetts, in Boston. So gorgeous.
No, it's not always easy, but also,
No, no.
like, this is for anyone who's listening who is going through radiation or chemo. Um, Something that happened to me is I had to have my head strapped to a table for the radiation. So I had this like mask and I was strapped down, and I'd
Mhm.
have to like hold on to these handles to kind of keep my shoulders down. And I
Okay.
remember like gripping them during one of my radiation sessions. And I was just like holding on so tight. I'm like, are the radiation beams getting there? Because I can't see it. I can't hear it. I can't feel it. And God was like, and that's faith. And I was like, oh. And it
Yes.
was this moment of, and so rather than like gripping onto those handles, like I just opened up, and I always say palms up. And from that moment on, like it's like palms up, like, okay, I'm doing what is mine to do, but God, you've got the rest. And rather than laying there so focused on the radiation working, He gave me a rest in my soul to kind of lay there, palms up. I love it's about like Him sitting beside me, holding my hand, and then just praying for people. So even in those moments where you're not even with anybody else, even just when we can be so ruminating on our own thoughts or our circumstances, is to find a rest in Him that can help us even look outwardly when we're alone on those tables.
Yes. And they are kind of scary places to be. I know for mine, they did have to mold. I don't even know what it was, some kind of foam they had to mold to my chest area so that I wouldn't move
Mhm.
during the treatment. And it's confining. I know probably people can maybe more relate to something like an MRI. Probably more people have experienced MRIs than radiation, but it's a similar type of large machine, for lack of a better word, and you are confined. You can't be moving because those radiation beams have to hit their target, and you don't want them hitting other places because of the damage that they can do. Um, and I remember sitting there similar to what you were describing and praying
Mhm.
because yeah, you could sit there and sit in fear. And um, I think the first few times I was like, well, is it over yet? Is it over yet? You know, how long do I have to stay in here?
Yeah.
And then you just realize that, okay, you can use that time to pray.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, and I don't remember, it's 4 years ago now. I don't remember, if I prayed for specific people or specific reasons, but I do know that I do when, especially I've been in way too many MRI machines. I can't count anymore.
Mhm.
But there's just something calming, even if you're just praying for yourself or you're just praying in general and you don't know what to pray for. It's that there's just a peace and a calmness when you're sitting there and you're just praying and you're not focusing on whether it's the loud pings of the MRI machine or the radiation beams there. And so, yeah, so thank you for sharing that you did that too. So so maybe other people now know they're not alone.
And also, it's not every time. Like, I definitely go back for my scans, and sometimes I have complete peace going into my scans, and sometimes what the term scanxiety is real, where you're uncertain, and that's when like they'll sometimes ask if you want music, and I have like a certain station I have them put on, so I have like some music flooding my ears that like brings wisdom and truth to my heart and my mind, so every experience is different. So I don't want to sugarcoat this that everything is always perfect because it's not, but the battle
Right.
for our hearts and minds is real. And then, being able to find that place of rest is such a gift. It's such a gift to be able to be not living in fear, having faith greater than the fear. And it's yeah, I'm so thankful you had that too. And for your listeners that they have it too.
Yes. And I agree. I agree. It's not, I don't think that either one of us are trying to present any of this as being easy or perfect all the time because you had anxiety. I know that I did too. Um, I know that I had a little bit of anger
Mm,
and resentment because I went through it during COVID and I
mm,
and I was alone. My mother would sit in her car outside and wait. She would drive me and then she would sit and wait because she wasn't allowed in the chemo treatment facility or the radiation one. And so yeah, that fear is real, that loneliness is real, the anxiety um, is definitely real. Um, so it is not perfect, but finding those ways and learning those lessons, maybe your lessons and mine can help someone else to maybe have a little less fear or a little less anxiety or
mhm.
even just have an idea of something to do when they're sitting in there waiting or listening to I just hit my table, sorry.
That's
Um,
all.
I just saw the screen shake. Um, but while they're sitting in there waiting, and I think sometimes that's the hardest part, or one of the hard parts is that fear that appears in the waiting because you just don't know.
Mhm.
It's that fear of the unknown and how long is it going to take? Is it going to hurt? Is it going to help? Is it going to hit its target, like you were saying? So, yeah, I think if we can help somebody have a little bit less fear, I think that would be wonderful, a wonderful place to start. Is just, a little less fear, and then a little less the next time, and reduce each time.
Yeah,
So,
and I would say just a couple with that is, you know, um, be intentional and directional what we put in our eyes and our ears. I
mm,
remember like people would send me things and I was like, please send me for me, and this is everyone's different, but for me, I was like, please send me scripture or jokes. Like I wanted nothing in between. I didn't want like, how are you? I'm like, I didn't know how to answer that. Like I couldn't handle my
right.
emotions days. So like I just wasn't able to necessarily always respond or process. But when you're in the waiting rooms and stuff, or when you wake up, you know, I the and I guess analogy that I love is like what goes into a computer is what comes out. And
Mhm.
for us, like what we put in our eyes and our ears really does matter, and it could help set the posture of our hearts and minds. And so, if we're on, looking up statistics or looking up other people's stories, like it can create some seeds of fear in our hearts and minds, which are more weeds than nourishment. And so just be mindful of where you're looking, what you're listening to, and, putting in things that are going to really help plant seeds of love and of peace and, and bring a calm to the storm in your heart and not possibly in, make it bigger.
Yes, and looking things up on the web. The
It
internet is
doesn't.
not a doctor.
Well, some people, but I even like with like I don't even know what I took, but as soon as I got the medicines I needed to take, it like to, prior to this, you need to take this, and prior to chemo, whatever. And I would just say to my husband, you read the side effects because I could create them if I read them, Like
Yes.
my mind is definitely one that I absorb things, and where my husband, if he got some meds or something, he could probably take it, read everything, and not think twice about it. So all of us are different in how we process things. But if you know that you're more of a sensitive processor like I am, again, the guarding of our hearts and our minds does matter. And that sometimes happens by guarding what we put in our eyes and our ears, what we're reading, watching, listening to.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. So you've mentioned several ways that you are thriving and helping people today. And you've mentioned your books and your podcast. Can you share where people can find you and get in touch with you? Because like I said, not everybody is going to have your cancer, or not everybody's going to have my cancer, but they're all going to either have, unfortunately, in this day and age, I think everybody's going to either have cancer or know someone going through cancer. And I know that you shared with me you had some resources for both types of people. So can you share those resources and then where people can come find those?
Sure. Well, my website is ShawnElizabethGeorge.com, and on there I have a cancer resource page. And on that page, I share my story, but I also have a free PDF to links. There's two different PDFs. One is 30 tips for those newly diagnosed with cancer, and then the other free PDF is 25 ways to support someone, to support a friend with cancer. So you can find those resources on my website. Really just taking what I learned and things, something like when you send somebody a note, if you're the friend supporting someone, put at the end, do not need to reply, no need to reply. Like there's just little things that we could do because, there's so much we're already processing. So those two free PDFs are available to you on ShawnElizabethGeorge.com. And on there, I have, although this conversation was around cancer, I just love to encourage people to live from the inside out and just getting closer to God, getting His Word rooted in our hearts and minds, because it's just transformed my mind and my heart and my life so greatly that I just want to be a bridge in case others are, on their faith journey. If they have questions, that I'm, a resource to help people.
I think we need more of that. And so thank you for being that bridge for us. And then before we wrap up, do you have any warrior words that you can offer? I mean, you've offered us many, and you've been very generous with some lessons already. But do you have anything specific that you want to share directly to our listeners before we close?
Yeah, I'd say three words or two statements I live by. So the three words are pause, breathe, pray. And those three words in practice really can transform moments. They can transform our minds. They can transform our hearts. And there's a great quote by Viktor Frankl, who's a Holocaust survivor. And he was able to find light in the darkness there, which, was so powerful. And he has a quote that says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space, our opportunity for growth and freedom. And often when something happens, we immediately react and we don't realize there's a pause. And so practicing those words to pause, what our initial reaction is, to breathe and create space, and then pray, invite God in to give us wisdom to know what to say or do, what not to say or do in a situation. So those three words I live by. And then the second part of it is pause, breathe, pray, and live out love. So live out love towards yourself, live out love towards others. I'm not sure who needs to be lived out love towards, but just recognizing we are here to live out love. And so taking time in our day to pause, breathe, pray, and to be outward facing and live out love to others is truly words I would say have been a blessing to me when I put them into practice. And I pray our blessing to all of you.
Well, I want to thank you for living out love here with us today, because you gave us a gift and you shared with us, and I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. So
Well,
thank
thank
you,
you.
Shawn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
3 words that take your breath away. You have cancer. 3 letters that also take your breath away. NED. Shawn and I have heard both of those. And between those two, we have both experienced anxiety and fear. The fear is real. The struggle when walking through storms is real. You are not less than if you also experience fear and anxiety. There are always hard days, hard hours, hard minutes in our suffering. I loved Shawn's story of her suffering through week 1 of her treatment, then going home and spending the weekend with her family, and then returning to Boston for week 2 with renewed spirit and determination. She knew it was going to be difficult, but she had a choice. She could stay in the fear, or she could live out love. Something happens in us when we shift our focus from self to others. And that's not to say that we don't ever think of ourselves or take care of ourselves. It's true. We have to put on our own oxygen mask before we can help others with theirs. And I've also heard it said that we cannot pour out of an empty cup. Agreed. But once we have our oxygen, we can move out of the fear and into action. This does not remove the circumstances or the situation that cause the anxiety, but it keeps us from dwelling on it and sitting in those what ifs. Plus, when we focus on others, we can become a bridge. And I love that Shawn used that word, bridge. We don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to know the perfect solution to the problem. But we can be a bridge to something or someone who does. And more specifically, we can be a bridge to God for others. We can use 3 of Shawn's warrior words and live out love. So how can you be a bridge for someone this week and live out love in your life? What are your lupine seeds? Something to think about this week. And don't forget Shawn's other 3 warrior words. Pause, breathe, pray. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.